Welcome back to the Bill and Doug Show. It's time to do our playoff brackets. We reserve the right to, when we get to the individual games, have gathered more information. Things have happened. We've changed our mind, but everybody does this right now, Bill, so we're going to do it.
Yeah, let's do it. And if it's right, I will brag about it. And if it's wrong, don't hold me accountable for it.
It's podcasting 101 right there. That's why you're a champion. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, thanks for being here. Go to Roback, RHOBACK.com. Do your holiday shopping like that. Bang, you're done. 12 minutes. Grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, cousin, neighbor, friend, mailman. Man, if you get your mailman a Roback,
oh, wow.
Come on.
Good. Yeah.
You're going to get the best letters. Roback.com, hoodies, quarter zips, polos, 20% off with the code BAD20. Like, subscribe, tell a friend about the Bill and Doug Show. Bill Landis, I looked at 25 national football folks. I looked at the CBS Sports people. I looked at what they had put out for some of the athletic folks. I looked at what ESPN.com did. Saw Nicole Auerbach from NBC Sports. Grabbed our friend Ari Wasserman from On3, also JD Pickleman from On3. 25 people and who they picked to win the national championship.
Okay.
How many do you think picked Ohio State out of 25?
11.
Get yourself a Roback right there. Forget the mailman. Nailed it. 11. You win a Roback. Guess how many picked Indiana?
5.
4. Guess how many picked Georgia?
I'm going to do math. So we were at 16 out of 25.
15 out of 25.
15 out of 25. Georgia, 9.
8.
Okay.
So there's 2 left. How do you think they were distributed?
1 to Oregon and 1 to Texas Tech.
Both to Texas Tech. I have not seen anybody pick Oregon to win the national title yet.
Interesting. Okay.
Of the people who, what else they picked for Ohio State? Again, Ohio State, 11 titles, 4 make the championship and lose, 10 lose in the semis to Georgia. There is a Georgia vibe that, no offense, is ridiculous. So I don't know what's wrong with everybody. What are they seeing? The people who are getting ready to ride that dog, they're riding that dog all the way until the 3rd week of January. Why?
I think there was a notion that Georgia was starting to figure some stuff out right before the game against Georgia Tech. I know I felt that way. And then you watch them play against Georgia Tech and you're like, okay, maybe this is more or less the same team I thought they were all year, which is like not a bad team, but a kind of a flawed team. And then they got to the SEC championship and won handily against a team they often lose to. So I get it. And I also think, I don't know that this is right necessarily. And certainly last year told us that it probably doesn't matter. But people like to pick like the hot team going into the NCAA tournament. And I wonder if people want to pick the hot team going into the college football playoff. And Georgia, I guess, is kind of hot, although a lot of teams are coming in off of multiple wins in a row.
Yeah. The Georgia Tech game means something to me. Whatever. That Kirby was able to shake off his Bama thing and beat a very mid Bama team in the SEC championship game doesn't really impress me that much. Gunnar Stockton has them.
So they were. I'm running through. Mm-hmm. They lost to Alabama. I'm sure they didn't really blow anyone's doors off. It's 35-10 against Texas, 35-3 against Charlotte, then 16-9 against Georgia Tech, and then 28-7 against Alabama. But there's not like all of a sudden Georgia started beating teams 52-0 in here. 41-21 against Mississippi State, 24-20 against a bad Florida team, rivalry game, whatever. Only beat Ole Miss by a touchdown, and Ole Miss was threatening to, I think, come back from a pretty big lead there, from a pretty big deficit there. So
should have lost Tennessee. That was a long time ago, but should have lost Tennessee.
44-41 against Tennessee. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's a thought that the defense is rounding into form. Gunnar Stockton's a little bit of a gamer. I don't know. I certainly don't write them off, but I think there's probably a little too much confidence in Georgia based off not a lot of reason to feel that way.
Yeah, I think you're stretching on Georgia if you're picking them to win it all. Because as you've been pointing out, I mean, it's like the front four havoc rate that you've been talking about. Like Georgia just is not as disruptive defensively as usual. And I honestly think there's one guy who scares you on offense outside the QB in Zachariah Branch. And then, like I said, I just don't know who else like you're game planning around as a defense. And so, odds to win it. Ohio State becoming more of a favorite. They're currently at plus 195 to be the national champ. Indiana 3-1 plus 300. Georgia 6-1. Oregon and Texas Tech both plus 850. So that's your top five. Then a big gap. Texas A&M 19-1. Bama 22-1. Miami 22-1. Ole Miss 27-1. Oklahoma 50-1. And then Tulane and James Madison 750-1 to win it all. So we're going to go through our bracket. The first round games, Alabama is favored by 1.5 over Oklahoma. The game is at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has beaten Alabama already. Oregon is favored by 21.5 in the 5-12 matchup against James Madison. Texas A&M at home is favored by 3.5 against Miami in the 7-10 matchup, and Ole Miss at home is favored by 17.5 against Tulane, a team that they beat earlier this year 45-10. They have look-ahead lines for the quarterfinals as well, but we'll talk to them after we do like our first round picks. So let's start with Alabama, Oklahoma. I think I would rather beat myself to death with this Stanley mug than pick Alabama. I was filling up my Stanley mug at my favorite convenience store on Thursday afternoon, and I dropped the mug, and it sounded like a cannonball. And the manager came out and was like, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, "I dropped my mug. I'm sorry." I would rather drop the mug against my cranium. I don't like Oklahoma either, but this is not like what. We're gonna have Ralph Russo on the show. I love Ralph Russo. At The Athletic, he picked Alabama to beat Oklahoma and also beat Indiana. And he was like, "I don't think Alabama should be in the playoff, but I picked him to make the semis." And I was like, "Are you throwing your career away, Ralph? Like, what is this? There's nothing. What is there? What is leading you to Alabama beating anybody?" I'll take Oklahoma.
I'll take Alabama in this game. This is like the one I did not take like a super hard look at. Oh, well, I guess that's not true. Like Miami A&M's a real game.
Yeah.
When Oklahoma beat when Oklahoma beat Alabama, Alabama turned the ball over 3 times with 17 points for Oklahoma, which has a terrible offense. Oklahoma scored on an 87-yard pick 6. Bama also missed a field goal. They just like pooped the game away. Alabama did, and certainly they're capable of doing that again here on the road against Oklahoma. And Oklahoma's defense is very good, but I'll just like assume that they won't make as many mistakes again, and I think they can win a close one against Oklahoma.
I will say, would it not be true that Alabama has tried to poop away many games this year, and several opponents have been unwilling to catch the poop? And Brett Venables, to his credit, was right there with that doggy bag,
waiting for it. Yeah.
Right. Have you ever seen some people on the dog walk? They catch it like soft serve ice cream right out of their chute. They don't even wait for it to hit the grass. Insane. What are those people doing?
Yeah, absolutely insane.
Those people are either geniuses or they're maniacs. So if you are a person who is catching it right out of the dog, straight out, never hits the ground, please let us know how and why you do that. Find us on Twitter and respond. But that's what Brent Venables and John Mateer in Oklahoma did. And also John Mateer was playing with one hand against Alabama. And I'm going to assume his other hand has grown back by this point. Has his hand grown back?
So one thing, I wrote a thing on our Substack about just like, it was mostly about Ohio State's path. But in that, I did go and look at like quarterback play over the last month. Because while I think like team form might be a little bit misleading, I think like quarterback form might be a little more instructive. John Mateer, like by far the worst quarterback in the playoff over the last month. Like it's not even close. I want to see if I can find it.
This is a very difficult position that the committee has put us in, where you're having to pick one of these mid SEC teams, and in the course of picking one, having to try to find something nice to say about them. And so I should have just stopped with Brent Venables caught Alabama's poop. I shouldn't have had to try to lean into John Mateer at all.
So there are many ways to decipher this. I just used overall PFF offensive grade since November 1st among FBS quarterbacks with 100 dropbacks, which was a sample size of 112 FBS quarterbacks. Overall PFF grade, John Mateer was 98th out of 100 out of 112.
Okay. Good luck.
Ty Simpson 69th. Like Ty Simpson, not great either, 69th, but not 98th.
What have they done to us?
John Mateer over that span, 2 big time throws, 5 turnover worthy plays.
If they had gotten the bracket a little bit different, and if Alabama and Oklahoma were playing Texas A&M and Miami, I'd pick Texas A&M and Miami. In either of those two matchups, I didn't care how it worked out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I would have too.
Instead, we have this mid showdown. All right, you take Bama, I take Oklahoma. That was too much expenditure on that. Oregon, JMU, 21.5. Someday, a group of 5 team is going to beat a Power 4 team in the first round. I do not think it starts with James Madison and Oregon.
Neither do I. I have Oregon.
Ducks. Texas A&M, Miami. 3.5. Texas A&M favored at home. I just started watching a little bit. I watched the first drive of Miami Pitt on the highlight reel, and it was just taking forever, and everything was a 3-yard gain. And Carson Beck dropped the most awkward spin move that I have ever seen in my life. He scrambled out of the pocket, and it was a fine job by a quarterback trying to make a play, but it was a 2-footed spin move. It was like a set shot version of a spin move that it was like in slow motion. I have no idea what it was, and they wound up kicking a field goal. And I went into that thinking, like, let me watch some good Miami, because they like handled 38-3 or whatever it was in that game. They handled Pitt. And I watched 4 minutes of it, and I was like, this is good Miami? What is this? Why is Miami in the playoff? Like, what are we doing? But I'm going to take Miami. I'm going to watch I'm going to watch more Miami games, and I'm going to assume that there's going to be something good in the Miami viewing post-September. But now I'm getting worried. I'm getting worried if there will be or not.
Yeah. There may not be. But there's also like not a I don't think there's a ton of like super impressive on either of these teams' resumes other than them both beating Notre Dame. Yep. And Texas A&M needed to cheat to do it, so I'm picking. I didn't cheat, but there was a very egregious holding penalty that was not called on their game-winning touchdown. When the bracket first came out, I think I was like very quickly like A&M. I had not thought about it a ton, but I thought about it some and like looked over some things, and I'll pick Miami too. Primarily, I know you don't love Carson Beck. Whatever you think of him, I think he is at the very least playing much better than Marcel Reed has played lately. It's sort of a thing like which untrustworthy quarterback do you trust the most? And it's like, I guess I'll trust Carson Beck, even though they're on the road at A&M. So I'll take Miami and not feel great about it.
Yeah. It's really not about feeling sorry for Notre Dame. It's about being mad at Notre Dame.
I don't feel so. Yeah, I'm pissed at them. Yeah.
Like, they should be in here. What did you do? What have you done to us?
Yeah.
Ole Miss, Tulane. This is at Ole Miss. Again, they played earlier this season, and it was not close. Ole Miss is favored by 17.5. However, in that first game, Jake Retzlaff for Tulane threw for like 56 yards and got benched, and Ole Miss just scored on practically every possession in that game.
That's what they do.
And overall, Ole Miss does not have a very highly ranked defense, but Tulane, I think, just got in its own way. They had a couple drops in that game. And again, like when you go through Retzlaff's individual stats, it just stands out. He got benched in the second half for Brendan Sullivan. It just stands out. Like everything since then, it's like 280 passing yards, 238 passing yards, 311 passing yards. It's like, why do you have 56 passing yards against Ole Miss? So you can't ignore that. But I think the combination of Tulane played terrible. If you think John Sumrall's a good coach, Jake Retzloff made it through a Big 12 schedule last year. He's been in big games. And you have to account in some form, even though the committee in the end did not at all account for the fact that Lane Kiffin and the staff left, but now they let the offensive staff come back to Ole Miss from LSU. I think it has a chance to be wonky for Ole Miss here. Like, how are you trying to evaluate Ole Miss?
I mean, similarly to everything you just sort of laid out, I just don't. You can watch Ole Miss and be pretty impressed with what they do offensively. Like sometimes they do look like a bit of a machine offensively, but I just I have a hard time seeing them be that without Lane Kiffin on the sideline and also with a defense like getting their second crack at them. So I don't know, like who has more like high leverage game experience? Jake Retzlaff, I guess like Trinidad Chambliss is a champion at lower levels of college football, but you must like prefer his like Retzlaff's experience maybe over Chambliss's in this game. I don't know. What's the spread?
17.5, and it was 45-10 first time around.
We're not doing that here, but like I think I would very much be interested in taking Tulane with the points, but I don't know that it can actually win.
Give me Tulane. I can't.
You're calling it?
I'll call it. I'll call my shot.
Okay.
Just because how can I have to pick one SEC team because they made the matchup. But I do think you honestly can look at this with the Ole Miss chaos, with the viewing the fact that Tulane got destroyed the first time around more as a motivating learning experience for what actually is a pretty decent team, as opposed to proof that they have no chance to compete, right? So it's not, I mean, Tulane went through its schedule then in the American, and they weren't destroying people either there necessarily. I mean, 38-32 Memphis, 24-17 against Army, 26-19 against East Carolina. Like, we understand that it is just a different level of competition. But they did handle their business. They blew out Northwestern to start the year. They beat Duke the week before they beat Ole Miss. Like, I think they're a decent football team, and I just think if you're a decent football team, is that enough to trip up a team whose head coach left for a better job?
I don't know. I think maybe, yeah. And there's some FBS talent on Tulane's roster. The thing that would like really jumped out to me as I was like going through some stuff again, just sort of like cursory, in both SP Plus and the Fermo Index, James Madison's like 20 points higher than Tulane.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird. Like we all think of like Tulane as like this very good G6 team. It's like, well, I don't know. Opponent adjustment metrics seem to think James Madison's better.
Right. No, I was sort of like, yes, cruising through there, and they were like 57th or something. Tulane was, and I was like, what? Mm-hmm. So this is a crazy pick, but I just hate the SEC. And so I don't think Ole Miss should be 6. I think this is a chaotic dingleberry fest. Like, let's have some comeuppance for this chaos. Because I feel Lane Kiffin leaving Ole Miss was the number one story in college football, and now he's gone. And I don't know, like are people talking about like, hey, what is Ole Miss? How can Ole Miss play? Their coach left. They're in tatters. I don't know that's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not listening to the right shows.
Like Charlie Weiss Jr. is coming back to lead the offense, but like he wasn't the play caller, right? So he was with Lane at FAU when Lane called the plays, and he was with Lane at Ole Miss when Lane called the plays. I'm assuming for 2 years at South Florida he called the plays. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I think their offense could look quite clunky, and this could be close. But I think I'd still pick the team with the deeper level of FBS talent. CFB graphs, by the way, EPA per play projections has Ole Miss by 12 points. So fewer than the spread.
Okay. All right. I'm nuts. That's fine. Let's go to the quarters. You have this As Bama, Indiana, I have it as Oklahoma, Indiana. The look-ahead lines, Indiana is -8.5 against Oklahoma, -6.5 versus Alabama. You have Indiana, Alabama. Who do you have winning?
Indiana. We can talk about it when we move to the next round. Like I do have some questions about the Hoosiers on injury stuff. But I think they can get this done here. I just don't think Alabama is very good. I think they're going to have to beat Oklahoma because Oklahoma's offense stinks. But I don't know. Alabama has not impressed me all year, and Indiana is at the very least the second best team in the country, and maybe the best team in the country. So I'll take the Hoosiers.
And Sig will have them ready. I don't think
Sig will have them ready. Yeah.
They're not going to have a layoff and then come out flat against a mid-SEC team. So I'll take Indiana over Oklahoma. Texas Tech, Oregon. We're assuming the Oregon win is a 4-5. Texas Tech is favored by 1.5. How do you see this?
The game I said I was most excited to see when we did our show with Jahan Jeharaja earlier in the week. I'm assuming that Oregon will be healthy. I guess we don't know. But I do think if the Ducks are healthy, that offensive line can maybe do enough to not allow Texas Tech's defensive front to take over the game. And I think Oregon is capable of being decently more explosive on offense than Texas Tech is. So I'll take the Ducks there, assuming health for Oregon.
Yeah, I'm curious to see this Oregon rushing attack, try to control the game. They've battled through a lot. It's a reminder. They're mad still, and this is the hiding in plain sight team. That they were the only undefeated team a year ago. They were the 1 seed, and they got boat raced by Ohio State in the quarterfinals, and then it was, and then they got beat at home by Indiana this year, and they kind of got pushed off the radar a little bit, and they're kind of just sitting here with a pretty good coach. They are losing both coordinators to head coaching jobs, but they're hanging out. But like, we can't pretend that's not a thing. It certainly is a thing to some degree. Good combination of young guys and veterans and transfers. Certainly a capable quarterback in Dante Moore. They have had a ton of receiver injuries. They've had offensive line injuries, but they have a really good run game and they have a really good defense. And if the passing game gets healthy, I think we have a chance to see the best version of Oregon that we've seen all year. And Dan Lanning, I would imagine, is going to have them on a razor's edge because a year ago they went into this thing as the favorite and they didn't even win a game. And so now, all right, you beat JMU. Nobody cares. What are you going to do now? And even the idea, though, that they stretch their legs a little bit, I don't want to put too much stock in this team was off. Are they rusty from the bye? This team got to play. But this is like Oregon gets to be at home in Autzen as a 21-point favorite against JMU. Get the juices flowing. Get some maybe guys who are injured. Give them a little bit of a run before they put them on the field against Texas Tech. And just like remind everybody of maybe what they are. While Texas Tech has a bunch of guys who have had a tremendous season but have never really been in here. And Oregon was here last year and are mad about it. So this is my don't forget about Oregon warning, and I'll take Oregon.
The one thing, like, you want to talk about the coordinators leaving is like, I don't defensively for Oregon, I'm not super concerned about it because it's Dan Lanning's defense. It's not Tosh Lupoi's defense. And there's always been, I think, questions about Tosh Lupoi and, his, schematic credentials, I suppose. Very good recruiter. Could be great at Cal. I have no idea. Don't really care. I think Will Stein, who's going to be the head coach at Kentucky and the OC at Oregon, like, has to be on his game because this Texas Tech defense will smother you if you're not. So I don't want to be entirely dismissive of that. I think it'll be like a really good game. That's why I was excited about it. But I think there's an emotional edge for Oregon because of how last season ended.
Yeah. Okay, good game. Ohio State. They are listed as look ahead 7.5-point favorites over Texas A&M, 9.5-point favorites over Miami. We both picked Miami. I do think it is interesting. I think it is very reasonable that making the playoff must take your floor into account, which is why you don't get to brush away terrible losses. Consistency matters. being good week after week matters. But then once you get in the playoff, I really do, like, you kind of are looking for teams with ceilings, which is why Miami is interesting to me. Because like with their talent, like what does their best maybe look like? Even though they're a bunch of ding dongs who lost to Louisville and SMU during the year, right? But also, SMU is a decent team, and that game was very close. And Louisville is on a Thursday night, was kind of weird, right? So they do have some talent. So I will be curious if it's them. If they look good against Texas A&M, I will be very curious about the discussion leading into Miami-Ohio State game, because there was a time early in the year after the Notre Dame win when you looked at the raw talent on Miami's roster, both sides of the line, veteran quarterback, a couple explosive guys with the ball in their hands, and people were like, yeah, this looks pretty good. I will be curious if that conversation comes back if we're staring at Ohio State-Miami.
I think it will. And then I think you can look at the specific matchup of Miami's defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line, right? There's two real dudes there for Miami, Ruben Bain Jr. or Akeem Mesidor, like both 40-plus pressure kind of guys. And the other thing that they're certainly on my mind that I think would probably come to the forefront as we will discuss that game, Corey Heatherman, the Miami defensive coordinator, was at one time the defensive coordinator at James Madison for Kurt Cignetti. I haven't studied Miami. I would imagine like running some of the similar things that gave Ohio State problems in the Big Ten championship game when Ohio State lost to Indiana. So I can see a lot of that being discussed. And it's frankly a question that Ohio State has to answer, because if it plays the way that it played up front against Indiana, it can lose to Miami. I don't think it will. I think Ryan Day has usually had his team ready to play at its best or pretty darn close to it when it's had a break like this. And I think that's the form that the Buckeyes will be in. So I pick Ohio State to win this game.
Me too. So we'll both take the Buckeyes, but it could be fun. It could be fun to talk about this thing and get ready for this thing. And now we've just spent all the time on that. It'll probably be Texas A&M and Ohio State, and be like, oh, I'm gonna think of that. Georgia Tulane.
Nobody thinks again. Home game for Tulane.
There's not even a line. Like, they didn't do the look ahead lines for either Tulane or JMU winning. So Georgia would be a 5.5-point favorite over Ole Miss, a team they beat by a touchdown during the regular season.
CFB draft says Georgia by 15
over Tulane.
Yeah.
Okay. What do they say of Georgia Ole Miss?
Georgia by 3.
Interesting. Okay. I'll take Georgia. You think
I will also take? Yeah, I'll take Georgia. Yeah.
The Fighting Goldings don't have a little shot there. I just can't. We already spent too much time on Oklahoma, Alabama. I can't dive into too much into two SEC mediocre teams playing each other. So we are looking at the same final. No, we're not looking at the same Final Four. Yeah, we are. You picked Oregon too, right? Yeah. Indiana, Oregon as one semi, and Ohio State, Georgia as the other semi. These are two good games. And I do think, and if it's Texas Tech instead of Oregon, that'll be a good game too. But I think if you stare at the first round games and people are like, why do we have a 12-team playoff? None of these games are any good. Like, it's extra football. It's exciting football. It's teams that have a chance. Their fan bases have a chance. I think there's a lot of value in that. But the Final Four is going to be pretty good, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think yeah. I mean, I guess you could get I don't know. Yeah, I think you will be. You're not going to get an SEC versus SEC game, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. So we're going to have 3 Big Ten teams and an SEC
I guess you
team,
could.
the way
you
God
could.
intended.
You could get, if A&M gets through, I guess you could. But
yeah. That's not going to happen. Indiana, Oregon. Again, we have proof Indiana went on the road and beat Oregon, but is that proof that Indiana is going to beat Oregon this time? And also, you talked about injuries, like losing Stephen Daly up on their defense is a big deal for Indiana, right?
Yeah, I think it could be a big deal, in the quarterfinal too. But I think it matters here more for me, and it's Indiana just does not have really like a ton of depth anywhere. It's just sort of the nature of the program. They have some depth, but I don't know that they have a like for like replacement for Stephen Daly. who had 6 pressures against Ohio State. He has 41 on the year. He's just an integral part of their very overwhelming, havoc-generating defense, and they're going to have to find a way without him, and I think that'll matter here. I kind of think like Oregon's going to do to Indiana what Ohio State did to Oregon last year, not win by that margin necessarily, but just sort of like avenge a regular season loss in the playoff, and take it to the national championship. So again, this is banking on Oregon health. I think healthy Oregon is not being discussed enough. I think you probably feel that way too. It was a great game when they played in Eugene back in, I think it was October. If Indiana were fully healthy, I'd probably pick them to win the rematch, but they're not. And Daly is really important, so I'll pick Oregon to win this one.
Me too.
Oh, so we're just going to have the same championship game then? Because I know you're not picking Georgia to beat Ohio State.
What if I was just like, people, I got to be true to my football acumen. I just really love the cut of Josh McCray's jib as Georgia's third running back. I can't get away from the dogs. We started talking about angry Oregon after the Big Ten meetings. And we were like, like angry and good. Angry and good is quite a thing. And now like angry and good and kind of getting healthy and sort of overlooked. I know maybe there are some people who have questions about big game Dan Lanning, but maybe like sneak up on you big game Dan Lanning is very intriguing to me. And so I am very intrigued by what Oregon is here. And we're both picking Ohio State to beat Georgia.
I am picking Ohio State to beat Georgia and avenge its 2022 Peach Bowl loss. Yes.
Okay. If we get this game, we will spend 17 hours breaking it down before that game. We don't have to do it today. You and I have the same national championship game of Oregon, Ohio State. Those 25 national people that I referenced, do you know how many of them had an Oregon, Ohio State national championship game?
No.
None. A couple people had Oregon in the national championship game, but both people who did had them against Georgia. So they were going like the whole, like the upset bracket, right? Like the national championship game is 3 versus 5, right? So nobody has this. So just to be clear, you might look and think, here they go, Bill and Doug again, picking the same stuff. But we're on an island together, but nobody else is on our island. So that's okay. So you can think that we share a brain, but we're not sharing it with anyone else. So we're still a unique coupling here, Bill, that this is not what people are talking about, but I think this would give us something. And because the team who is set up to be last year's Ohio State is Oregon. So yeah, it's like sort of last year's Ohio State versus this year's Ohio State, except this year's Ohio State is also last year's Ohio State because they're coming off a loss. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of good Big Ten drama here. And whether we wind up, if it's Ohio State, Indiana or Ohio State, Oregon, there is revenge in ways across the board here because the best teams in the league have played each other the last 2 years. And I think it's going to be a banger. So give me South Florida and a Big Ten championship game. Ohio State versus either of those two teams, we will be super fired up to cover. And if it's Georgia against one of those two teams, I'm not going. So...
Yeah. What do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to win?
I picked Ohio State.
Yeah, so did I. It's really honest. It's just like it's the defense, right? Like I don't think Ohio State will see a better offense the rest of the way than the one they just played against Indiana, and they held them to 13 points on a neutral field. Not even really a neutral field. It was like kind of a road game. I think Ohio State needs to score 3 touchdowns in every game and it's going to win. and I just, you know, they can't go out with the same plan they had against the Hoosiers. But I don't think they will. And as long as Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are healthy enough to sustain over a 3-game run, I just really have a really hard time seeing somebody beat Ohio State at its best, or if it's Indiana, like beating Ohio State twice. So I'll take the Buckeyes to repeat.
Points given up by this Ohio State defense this year: 7, 0, 9, 6, 3, 16, 0, 14, 10, 10, 9, 9, 13. So I think you keep saying like who can score 20 on the Ohio State defense, right? Like who can score, like if the Ohio State offense can get to 20, they're in pretty darn good shape here. And so that is just quite a thing to lay down. And then you even look at the Ohio State Indiana game, and as we've talked about, they had 2 drives at the end of the game where they did put together long drives and came away with 0 points because of short yardage and field goal and red zone issues. But it's not like their offense was completely snuffed out. So they have some stuff to fix for sure. Like the stuff that's popped up for them pops up against the best teams, but they're the favorites. They're plus 195, and I think they're a reasonable pick. Obviously, we cover Ohio State, but I think they're a very reasonable pick. I'm not going to pick an SEC team, not because I don't like the SEC, but because I just think those collection of teams continue to be overrated. And so, you know what? If Texas Tech beats Oregon and is like, okay, like I would not make any assumptions about Texas Tech. If they beat Oregon, Texas Tech could beat Indiana and Ohio State and win the national championship. I would not. I don't find that to be completely fanciful the way that I would find a Georgia national championship to be fanciful.
I will be on the record as saying I don't think the Georgia national championship is fanciful. I think they could win it.
Yeah. So, I wish Georgia. I mean, I kind of wish Georgia was opposite the Miami Texas A&M game, because I think that Georgia is going to play the winner of a G6 team and a team whose head coach left, and that's who Georgia gets in the first round. It's like, what? Like, for real? I think they did screw it up. I think they did screw it up by not having Texas A&M 6 and Ole Miss 7. Even if on the chart, it's like for every reason Ole Miss should be ahead of Texas A&M, but your coach isn't here, we're knocking you down a spot. Like, I think that's because there's no way Ole Miss would be 5, right? So it's not like they were knocked down they would have been ahead of Oregon if Lane Kiffin was here. I don't think that's true. So they're in the exact same spot they would be as if their head coach and their entire coaching staff were still here. And people were talking about whether this is going to be like, are they going to be penalized like Florida State and it's in the bylaws and all this stuff? They didn't move them at all. So I kind of wish Georgia was getting more of a game, because I don't think Ole Miss or Tulane are positioned to do anything to the Dogs, who I think are good, but not nearly what they've been and are vulnerable. So
yeah.
Okay.
Couple of homers.
I mean, it's one of those things. And I called out people last year, because last year in the regular season, I picked Oregon to beat Ohio State, and then Oregon beat Ohio State, and I felt like nobody else who covered Ohio State picked Ohio State to lose that game. It's like, guess what? Ohio State can lose sometimes. I don't know if anybody picked, including us. Did anyone pick Ohio State to lose to Indiana? Like, that covers Ohio State? Like, we were all in the bag for the Buckeyes for that thing, weren't we? Nobody was out there with Sig. Were they?
No, I don't think so. No.
So, but it is that defensive backbone. The defensive backbone is where it starts. So, but there are other teams with defensive backbones here too. So, if Texas Tech shows that, if Texas A&M shows that, if Georgia, not really them. Anyway, those are our picks. Picked Ohio State. We have a bunch of more stuff coming here on this feed, on this podcast feed, on this YouTube feed. You can find us on Substack, BillAndDougOSU.substack.com. And go back and catch our Monday Around the Shoe with Shahan Jeharaja. As Bill mentioned, that was a great conversation. We had a conversation on Tuesday about the playoff, and everybody should shut their holes complaining about the playoff, and they haven't. They're still complaining. And then we talked about Sharon Moore on a Thursday show that I think you guys would find interesting, and what it means for the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry in particular. So anything, when we're writing at the Substack, right? We're writing stories.
Mm-hmm. We are. Yeah. I wrote it. Yeah.
Would you write?
Wrote about Brian Hartline. Wrote about the playoff. Yeah.
I got to write stuff. Okay. Thanks to you guys for being here. Always appreciate you. We'll be back soon with more here on this YouTube feed and your podcast feed. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was the Bill and Doug Show.